Hi, welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk to Olga Kikou. She's the head of the AU office at Compassion in World Farming, and we're going to have a little bit of an update talk with her about the animals that were transported by sea. We've seen all this horrible news. We've seen the Karim Allah, we've seen the Elbeik, we've seen the cows that were suffering on these ships. The Suez Canal got blocked. We've known like 20 ships with live animals were blocked, but we want to talk about why is this business still happening. We see these horrible images, we see these horrible videos, we've talked to many animal welfare organizations here how bad it is on these ships, but why is it still happening? Welcome, Olga.
Thank you very much.
So first of all, why does this business exist?
The business exists because there is overproduction in Europe. Overproduction of animals, and they have found a way to when consumption in Europe is not at the desired level, then and it's lower than the desired level, then they have found this option, quote unquote, to send animals abroad and to export them for slaughter there. Fattening and slaughter quite often. So the fact that we overproduce here is directly linked to the live exports issue.
And just to get a quick update, what has happened within the AU? So these ships, the Karim Allah and the Elbeik, left from the AU. There were more than 10 ships, I think between 10 and 15, that were stuck at the Suez Canal blockage that were also from the AU. So you would think AU were developed. What was directly done within the AU?
Yes, in regards to the two ships, the Karim Allah and the Elbeik, we know that the whole journey took between 2.5 and 3 months. And then in the end, they both returned to Spain, and all the animals within those two ships were actually slaughtered / euthanized. This very unfortunate incident, actually this scandal, is part of everyday life. I mean, we see this happening with many journeys originating from Europe. We see many animals suffering over days and weeks in ships which are certainly not the right ships to be transporting animals. However, this is done, and in cases like those two ships, the end is very unfortunate and is actually a disaster. However, the fact that member states continue to insist on sending animals abroad outside the EU, sending live animals, keeps this trade going, and also restricts the European Commission from proposing legislation to ban this the exports outside the EU. So we have been pressing the EU to propose legislation. We have encouraging signs because now the European Commission has committed to review and revise the transport regulation 1/2005. So in regards to this revision, we are calling for an end to the use of an end to the export of live animals outside the EU, and also for improved implementation and additional rules regarding intra-EU transport. The main problem is that many member states continue to export animals, and they do not seem to be willing to stop the live exports.
And the main member states, those are, I think, Romania, Spain, Ireland still? Those are the countries that from Europe, right?
Yes, most countries actually export.
But
these are the countries that have that export many animals. Yes.
Yeah, and there's also, we're based in the Netherlands, but then there's also this link that countries like the Netherlands also send scouts to Spain, and they go from there on boats, because there were in the Middle East, there were some animals from even from the Netherlands with tags. You could see that. So there's these ways that countries are still doing that. But who is in this, like who is responsible for all this? For instance, we saw with the Karim Allah and with the Elbeik, you saw the owners. There's a business, there's a demand, there are financial reasons. You have Spain, but who is the main who can say, okay, we're going to stop this now, or who's mainly responsible for all this?
Well, we look to the European Commission to actually propose legislation. So we feel that this is the only way through legislation that this trade can stop. We don't see much willingness coming from the member states, despite the outrage from citizens, and despite the fact that animal welfare in Europe is a cherished value among Europeans. And most Europeans want higher standards for animals. Despite this, because of the economic benefit for certain industries, this trade continues. And we are in a situation now where, as the years go by, we see more and more animals being exported.
That's exactly. Because even after all this happened and it's outrage, there are still ships leaving today. I mean, they continue to go. So what I understand from you, this is for financial reasons, and also the European Union is basically even seeing all this news, and even there are other options. It's not whether people want to eat meat or not, but you can slaughter them in the country where they are and then send the meat. But the European Union basically isn't willing to even look at that.
Yes, this is there are some obstacles there, and the arguments that the member states use include the fact that people in the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey want live animals. Now, this may be partly true because of customs in those countries. However, on the side of the EU, we feel that this should not come into consideration, because once the animals leave the EU borders, there is no protection for them. There are no laws in those countries that will at least provide some minimum level of protection for these animals. During their, at least during loading and unloading, or fattening, further fattening, or slaughter. Therefore, for this very reason, this should be reason enough for the EU to just stop sending animals abroad.
Yeah, because that is a European that is European legislation, right? The rule is when the European animal leaves, Europe is still responsible for that animal until it arrives, and still a few hundred meters
destination. But there are ways to somehow not to have this rule basically become void, because we've seen some transporters actually transporting the animals. They go into the third country, close to the border with Turkey, for example. They go inside Turkey, and then close to the border, they unload the animals, and they consider this the destination point. And then we don't know what happens to these animals once they leave this point. They're not covered by EU legislation, because they can easily point to a certain area near the border, and they can say this is the destination point, and that's it. And we don't know what happens after that. So this is easily overcome, let's say, by the transporters and those who are involved in this export trade.
And the option that many animal welfare organizations keep mentioning is saying send meat, not live animals. How realistic is that? It
is realistic as long as there is an effort from the part of the EU to push for this. And what we've seen so far is that from the side of member states is that it's much easier for them not to request or not to demand for such options, but instead since the option of sending live animals abroad is wide open, they just choose that. So they choose whatever is easiest.
It's easiest to just send them by. It's just because it's easy, because you would have to reorganize ships, but just because it's easy, the animal suffering is not.
Yes, in order to export meat, there are some considerations. First of all, you need to look at existing slaughter capacity in the member states involved. So we are talking about many member states across Europe to see how existing slaughterhouses will have this capacity, whether you need new slaughterhouses, etc. There's also the issue of killing animals with no stun, the no stun option, which is certainly we are against this in Europe. We do not support this no stun option, and so there are some considerations for this. Yes, it could be done, but we certainly need to have member states on board for this, for to change from transport of animals and export of live animals to export of meat and carcasses.
And when you say member states, are all member states against this? Are there some who are like for a ban? Are there some who are working with you, and which ones are the most difficult?
Well, certainly the ones that have the most at stake here, countries like Romania and Spain, who export many animals, and most member states are actually not in favor of a ban of live exports, unfortunately. So we need to work. We have a lot of work ahead of us also in regards to working directly, not just with the Commission, but also with the member states. So the ones who a direct interest from this and also benefit, let's say, from this trade are the ones that oppose the ban of live exports.
And there's now a commission looking into transporting live animals by sea. What do you expect? Because the conclusion cannot be like, oh, it's a great trade. But what do you expect will happen after? When will they be done with their research?
Yes, there is a committee in the European Parliament looking into animal transport within the EU and outside the EU. This committee, before the end of the year, will conclude its findings and will issue a report. And we are following this very closely because we would like to see the recommendations. The committee itself, its goals were to actually look at the implementation of the existing rules, of the existing regulation, and to see to what extent actually these rules are followed, to what extent there are problems. I am sure that they will report on many problems that are certainly evident in this trade. And we hope that this report will then be taken seriously by the Parliament, by the Member States, and by the Commission.
Yes. Let's hope that, even though from everything you've said in this interview, is that what I understand, because there have been, of course, on many issues, many reports where they say this should be better, but this is maybe a little bit of frustration from our side also. This is the I think 8th interview we're doing on this subject, and this is not discussion about farming or eating meat, because I mean, based in the Netherlands, you have enough farms here, but just the basic, what I've learned and what we've learned here is that transporting them by sea, like that alone is so much suffering, which is also unnecessary. So that is so shocking that even with all these news coming, we are basically, and you've also said that European people in Europe are against this. There's a lot of support not to do this. We've seen outrage on social media about this. But then as you and me are talking, this just continues. And we're going to wait till the end of the year, till the report comes. So basically, we might have next week another story, the week after another story, but we're still waiting till the end of the year and see. And while we're waiting, these animals are suffering, but extremely suffering.
Yes, exactly. The suffering continues. The interest of Europeans is on this issue is particularly high. However, we see that everything goes on business as usual by all those involved in this trade. And we will have to, I mean, that's how legislation goes. As far as legislation is concerned, it is a very time-consuming process. We are encouraged, though we do have encouraging signs. We do have an interest from the European Parliament, so that's why they set up this committee to look into this matter more closely. We do have a European Commission that has committed itself to actually review and revise the legislation on transport. So we have high hopes that finally we will see something happening in this field. We will see the suffering of animals to be limited, at least we will see hopefully stronger rules. But what is important to do for all of us is put member states under a lot of pressure, to keep the pressure on member states to stop this trade, because otherwise the rules cannot only be imposed on member states from Brussels. Member states need to also agree to these, and they need to realize that we're all involved, and the citizens, the positions and the views of the citizens in those member states do matter. So it's not just economic interests that matter, but actually the views and the values of the citizens themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's also because you have also been really active in involving citizens in this, right? I think that's also for people listening to this, or people who get angry. Like, what people can do directly is keep putting pressure in their own country on the government, keep requesting things, and keep signing petitions and supporting organizations like yourself, like Forpas, like many people who are busy with this now.
Yes, exactly. And keep signing petitions, keep being very vocal about this, being active on social media, and calling on member states, on politicians, local politicians, national politicians, EU politicians, to impose a ban here, to just stop the suffering. There are a lot of problems within the EU, within on the issue of transport, within the different member states and within the EU. However, what is happening outside the EU is the suffering is immense and it has to stop. We had the two ships just recently. We had the whole the scandal with the Suez Canal, and we're just waiting for the next disaster, one after the other. I mean, they never end.
Exactly, and that is there's no that's what we've seen also. There have been, I mean, you had last year the ship the Romania ship that fell over, and there's so many stories by now. It's just, you just Google this news, you go to our website, you see all these stories that so much has happened, but it's just, we just keep waiting. It would be almost logical to impose a ban first, then research, and then decide whether to do it or not. Like after the Karim Allah and after the Elbeik, to just ban it. I thought the EU might do that, but that was wishful thinking. But it's just shocking to see. We see all these examples, they become news stories, everybody covers it, and then we just go about as if nothing happened.
Yes, it's important to note here that these are not the exception to the rule. That this is everyday reality. We are talking about so many millions of animals being exported. We are talking about suffering at the point in their life, because we know what waits for them at the end. Okay. So we know that they're going to be slaughtered in using very cruel methods. And even if some of these animals are going for fattening, again, they will eventually be slaughtered. So this is a short time before the slaughter, they end up suffering so much, and we as European citizens cannot stand this anymore. We need to speak out. We need to be very active and very vocal about it.
Yeah, and that was, even though like it is, first of all, like the going on a ship for animals is horrible. The sad thing you also just mentioned now is with the Karim Allah and the Elbeik, they were for 2 and 3 months. And those were 8-month-old cows. They were calves, still babies, and their life is basically on that ship, and they're stuck together. If people want to see this, you can find footage of this, but they're stuck together for 3 months. I think Forpost described it as if we're in an elevator together for 3 months, just standing. And then when they finally get somewhere, they were in Cartagena, they're taking off and they're instantly slaughtered, and it wasn't even revealed how they killed them. So we're hoping it was at least some kind of humane way of killing. I hope, but it's like farming on itself. I mean, I talked to you about this last year. Farming on itself in every country, there's so many issues with this, but this specific element of transporting these animals, putting them in an unnatural situation, transporting them to another country, and when something goes wrong, everybody pulls their hands away. When it happened with the Karim Allah and Elbeik, nobody took responsibility. The EU didn't, Spain didn't, everybody just let them, and these are living things, and this is such a unnecessary suffering, completely unnecessary.
Yes, exactly. If we want to take EU legislation seriously, then these animals are sentient beings. They cannot be treated as cargo, and we are treating them as cargo. So this is one of the very basic arguments that someone can make against live exports.
Yeah,
the fact that they are treated as cargo is, and we've seen this again and again and again, is just reason enough to ban this trade.
Yeah, exactly. Is there it's a too long of a quote to show here. Phil Hill says, okay, we're disappeared, but they need to open up transport to public scrutiny, show it on TV, show the conditions, have truck drivers gadgets to monitor how long they drive. It would be easy and cheap to force CCTV. Is it something that's realistic to have cameras on these ships so people can see for themselves?
Yes. Well, who's going to see that? And I mean, we know even on trucks when we have transport by road, we've seen that sometimes the trucks are not equipped properly. Sometimes the tachometers or other gadgets that they have and other equipment that they have, even those that provide water to the animals, are not maintained properly. They do not work properly, or are situated in places in the truck where the animals cannot reach. Because let's think about this: we are talking about fully packed trucks. We are not, it's not easy to find your way through in there to the right equipment. So we see that there are many problems associated with this, and the longer the journey, the more likely it is that there will be problems down the road. So if you have these, in the case of ships, you have journeys that last for days and days and weeks. And now, we saw 3 months in the sea, 3 months. So see that the longer a journey takes, the longer it lasts, the more likely it is that you will see problems down the road.
So just concluding this, the Karim Allah and Elbeik, the Suez Canal, it was extreme suffering, but basically it continues as it is. The European Union is investigating this. Member states are not willing so far to ban this trade because there's financial gain. And what I also understand from you is that actually in this, even if there is demand in the Middle East and North Africa, the EU is to blame in this because they are still enabling all of this happening.
Yes, exactly. And we need to look at the broader context and issue of animal agriculture. If you keep farming animals and then you have a certain number of animals that you're not able to slaughter, you don't have buyers for, then people, farmers and the industry, they look for other markets. And in this case, outside the EU. So you can send these animals abroad and make money off of them. So it's an investment. You farm animals and it's an investment. And the more animals you have, the more likely it is you'll have a higher income. So you keep, this is an endless circle. You keep, farmers keep increasing their herds, increasing the number of animals they have, the industry, the same thing. And we live in a global environment. Therefore, there's trade between member states, between the EU and other member states, and this continues.
And we keep looking also from the European Union, we keep pointing fingers at Asia, at China, but what we're doing here in Europe, you and me are based in Europe, but what we're doing here, like especially this transport by sea, is really being enabled mostly by Europe.
Yes, exactly. And we also need to look at what we're doing. And the EU is a leader in animal welfare. We say this again and again, but we need to behave as a leader too. So if we do have high standards for animal welfare, we need to make sure that they are really high standards and not just in words, but in actual practice. And what we see here is that animals are treated as cargo, as any other cargo. It is just beyond our imagination to have animals in the sea and on these ships for 3 months, going around the Mediterranean.
Yeah. Thank you, Olga, for your time. Thank you for explaining this to us. And it's a sad conclusion that basically, as you and me go back to work, these ships continue to leave with animals.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for paying attention to this very important issue.
And thank you everybody for watching. If you joined a bit later, you can watch us back on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Thank you.